Thank you, everybody, and good evening and welcome to this Admin and Regulations Committee meeting. Just a few house rules before we get started. I just want to remind everybody that this meeting will be live streamed to the public. So and the recording of this meeting will be available on the council's website within 24 hours. So please could I ask everybody, members and officers, to switch off their mobile, switch on their microphone when they're talking and switch it off when they're not. And also can I ask people to also switch off their mobile phones and put them on silent. And if you need to take an urgent call, please can you leave the chamber and actually take it outside. So other than that, we'll get started. Apologies for absence, but
apologies from Councillor Ali Khan, the chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Minutes, there's no minutes for this meeting for us to approve, so that's useful. I think the timescales from the last meeting, we haven't got the minutes up and ready. Any section 106 items?
Chair.
Do we have any disclosures of interest? We all have that interest, so no, there isn't any interest, so if you can note that, but thank you. But is there any urgent?
Don't, Chair.
Thank you very much, Bert. And then references, are there any references from committees and other bodies?
Don't, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. So let's move on to agenda item 7, and we have a report there on page 1. Polling district review. So can I hand myself over to Debbie?
Thank you, Chair. We brought a report to committee in September just to give you some advance notice that we needed to carry out a compulsory review of polling places and polling stations because of a parliamentary boundary review that had taken place. Consultation was carried out in October. It closed on the 31st of October. And this report brings back to you several things: the outcome of that consultation, but also some suggestions made in response to feedback we had from the local elections in May, and also feedback following some inquiries we made later in the year about the possibility of using polling stations for a by-election, which didn't come to pass. But nevertheless, we had a number of observations made there that we've also responded to. The paper also includes proposals for changes to polling district boundaries that arise from the parliamentary boundary review. And all of the information is set out on Appendix A, but I'm going to ask Sam to run through all of that feedback for you so that you're really clear what we're bringing to you today. Thank you.
We all got a copy of Appendix A? Yeah. So I'm going to highlight a few things. So it starts with the feedback from the consultation period on page 1. And at the bottom of page 1, we've got some of the feedback received from Russell Cartwright on behalf of the Labour Party. And some of that was very useful for us. And I just want to highlight a few things. So FBO 7, which this was also raised in the previous committee meeting that we had about the number of polling stations in particular wards and how they were sometimes outside of the polling district. We have looked at that particular ward, Barnfield ward, and tried to find alternatives, none of which we found. And I also think because they hadn't submitted any alternatives, they weren't able to find any either. Otherwise, I think they would have mentioned them. So unfortunately, you know, that we didn't manage to proceed or make an improvement in that area. So if we move on to page 2 and FBO 8, there was a suggestion there about the closure of Bury Park Resource Centre and the use of an alternative, which was the Fellowship House, which is almost directly opposite Berry Park Resource Centre. We went down there, we did an inspection, and it's a very suitable location for a polling station. So that has been put in a response to the recommendation made by the Labour Party. We've also having a look at FB11. So this was one where we'd lost the first Luton Sea Scouts HQ, and we had to find an alternative venue. We were looking, as we reported last time, we were looking at the Indian Cricket Club Pavilion, which is up in Wardown Park. There were some reservations about the lighting leading up to it, which is always an issue with the polling stations, and they suggested the pavilion, Bowling Green Lane Pavilion, sorry, and we went up and had a look at that, and that was an excellent location. It's one that we had used previously, but they changed of management a while back, and they didn't want us to use it anymore, but they're more than happy for us to use it now. So we've taken that one on as well as one of our recommendations. And if we move down to number 13, FB13, so there was some concern about the use of the hotel, the Hampton at Hilton Hotel, as opposed to Hart House. It is I just want to clarify that it is a good location. When we went down there and did a visit, the room that we'll be using for the polling station itself is right at the front of the building. It's just inside the door on the right hand side. It's got good disabled access. They're making disabled parking available, and they are making additional parking available in the main car park for us as well. So I think it's going to bear fruit on that one. So I'd like to alleviate any concerns there.
Yes, Chair, as Sam said, we were grateful for Hart House, a polling station in a new area. We had to find a polling station, but the access to that particular building was difficult, and we strongly recommend the Hilton Hotel as an alternative.
So that's the end of the feedback. So moving on to page 3, just want to go to the major changes there. This is reiterating some of the stuff that I've just covered in the feedback again, but so Bury Park United Reformed Church, which is the first yellow one listed. I'm talking about using Fellowship House. There's a couple of pictures there that show the internals and the externals and the parking that would be available, showing how that would work. And on to page 4, talking about, this is one where Farley Hill Methodist Church have reduced the area that we can use, but they're going to give us essentially a corridor. And I think we can see from the size of the corridor that although it's not perfect, it's more space than we have in some of our other polling stations. So I think we'll be able to make that work. On page 4, the first Sea Scouts HQ, which is the yellow one marked there. Again, talked about that earlier, and the use of the pavilion. But just like to thank the Luton Town and Indian Cricket Club Pavilion. They were very welcoming to us, and were going out of their way to make a space available for us, and it was going to be a very good space. But unfortunately, it was topped by the fact that the pavilion in Bowling Green Lane is right next to where people are already going. So it's, people will be familiar with the route and the location. On page 5, again, the yellow one, that's just a nice picture of Hampton by Hilton Hotel, showing the main entrance at the front. And if you're looking at the building on you can see one of those glass bits at the front is where the actual polling station will be, and just showing where the disabled parking is as well, so you can see how adjacent it is to that. And if we move on to page 6, so this is another polling station we've lost, Luton Central Seventh-day Adventist Church, and looking at Luton Hall for Hire building, which is again in the same polling district. It has some parking out the front. I mean, it's limited, but it does have some parking, and it has good disabled access and a reasonable space to support 2 polling stations, a double polling station in there. On page 7, again, the yellow one, St Hugh's Church Hall. So the only issue with St Hugh's Church Hall, I mean, it was a good polling station, but not always available to be used. And what we didn't want to have the situation where we were sending them electors to one location for one election and then a different location for the next election. And, you know, it's easier if people are all going back to the same location each time. So we did a site visit to the Hindu Community Centre, and again, that's an excellent location for disabled access, parking, ease of access. It's got a good sized hall, and it's not a million miles away from the previous 2, because we used a school there, didn't we, as well previously, which the name of the schools slipped my mind, but they're all in kind of a very close area. And that's it for the polling station. So I just want to go on to page 9, page 9 starts with the changes to polling district boundaries themselves. And most of this is to do with the changes that have come into force due to the parliamentary boundaries. Apart from the first one shown here, which is the on page 9, which is bar 2N, which is a change just to the boundary of that ward, just which was suggested by Councillor Franks, which just means that people are going to a slightly closer and more convenient polling station from the new polling station being the Bushmead Community Hub and previously Wardown Hill Junior School. And I think it makes sense based upon the roads. And I probably drew the line in the wrong place last time I did it. This makes a lot more sense for the electors. Page 10, 11 and 12 are all about the changes to the Stopsley ward and how that's now partially north and partially south constituency. They drew a line through the middle of it. So we had to redo the polling districts so that they were coterminous with that new constituency boundary. And that meant we also had to move, just because we had to move some of the boundaries internally of the wards, which meant some electors are going to be going to a slightly different to a different polling station. But that's just in order to try and balance the numbers and things. But it hasn't made a huge difference, but it will be a different polling station for unavoidably really for a few electors within those areas. And those on page, and I've listed the properties that will be affected by changes on page 11 and page 12. I welcome questions.
Do we have any questions, committee? Councillor Joseph.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the reports. Read through, and it's a good one. I just want to clarify what you meant by noted in front of some comments by Russell Cartwright on page, what page is this? Page 1, is it? Page 1 of the report. So just FBO4, FBO5, FBO6, you had noted on it. So does that mean you taking the recommendation, or you're going to do anything about it?
The reason it's noted is because it's not strictly part of this choosing polling stations. So what we are going to do in all cases is, we know that for a lot of polling stations, lighting is an issue, and we're certainly going to be looking at that. But what we're trying to determine here is the most suitable polling station. And we know with every polling station there's issues. There isn't such a thing as a perfect polling station, and we're always trying our best to improve each polling station for electors, and they have been noted, and we will look at those individually. We haven't had a chance to do that in the time that we were doing this, but before the next election in May, we will have gone and checked those out and found out what we can do to improve the lighting, or what they can do to improve the lighting for us. And we will, we can come back with those, but we haven't had a chance to look at that at the moment.
Can I just add to that one? So in response to your question, Councillor, for example, FB04, that was a sort of an observation about the processes generally, rather than a recommendation about an alternative polling place, for example. So where there's been a recommendation for us to look at something new, we have done, but where it's a general statement about the process or the situation, that wasn't something we could respond to.
Any more questions? Councillor Keane.
Two of my questions. Yeah. The Indian Cricket Club. I wasn't very happy with it, but I don't think you were either by the sound of it. You have to go through Ward End Park anyway, and the nights are going to be darker when we get to any election. There's no lighting on that pathway, I don't think. The car park as such, it's got holes in it. It's very uneven. So I wasn't very happy with that being a polling station, but I think you've said it's not going to be, am I right? Right. So that's that one. Hampton Hill. Once again, the polling station is on the wrong side of the road, but there is nothing on the other side of the road you can use. Everybody lives up the hill. It's a dodgy old road to cross, which probably is one of the reasons why I think we only had 67 people vote at Hart House. Yeah, it wasn't far off, was it?
So that Hart House was a new polling station because of the housing development that had been put in place there. So I'm not sure that all of those properties are actually currently occupied, which will be a factor. But as that area grows and that accommodation has people in it, then there'll be more people in the location to actually come along and vote. So you might see a difference in numbers then.
Yeah. Hampton Hilton. Dealings with Hampton Hilton, they were not very accommodating. So I'm just wondering whether they know what they're expecting. Odd people, not residents, going in and out just to vote.
Yes, we have met with them twice, Chair. We found them very receptive to the request. It did seem to be clear what our request was. I guess the proof will be in using the building as a polling station next May, and of course we will reflect and review on that. But it was very good access into the hotel. We will double check that they're really clear on what we need.
Sorry, Chair, I've got one more. Stopsley Working Men's Club. There was numerous complaints last time about it. Apparently, the doorway was cluttered up with furniture, and it smelt of urine, which was one of the main queries we had. I'm just wondering if you can make sure it's really cleared up and it's fit for people to wander in and out of.
Thank you for that. We'll check the feedback on that one, but we'll certainly note that, take it on board and go back.
Councillor Nassar.
Thank you, Chair. I just want, if we go to page 8, that's about Warden Hill Junior School. So I'm just giving an example. What I can, it says about usually the school is very low ground, and they have because it's the nursery is adjacent with the junior school, so they have parking. But only thing is the issue is they have no disabled parking. So if the St. George's Methodist Church is not available, is there anything we could do, suggest for a, marked disabled parking or something like that? Thank you.
I hope it doesn't put him on the spot, but Bert, would you have a comment on this one being very closely aligned to polling station areas?
Which polling station did you refer to?
It's Warden Hill Junior School.
Warden.
What?
Warden.
Warden Hill.
Warden Hill.
Page 8.
Yeah, Warden Hill Junior School.
Okay. A lot of the schools don't actually provide a lot of parking, and obviously it's a question of doing the best you can because there are no alternatives to those locations. But they will actually allow disabled access if required.
Sorry, was the question about the alternative that we've identified? Yeah, so we identified it by driving past. We've been trying to contact them, haven't we, Bert?
Sorry, Chair. Yes, if you're referring to St. John's Church, we haven't been able to make contact with them yet. So we will pursue this as a possible alternative.
I think the question was if we don't proceed with that one and we stick with Warden Hill Junior School, could greater consideration be given to parking at that location? Was that your question, Councillor Nassar?
I mean, as long something is possible, just an alternative. Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, but I think what Councillor Nassar is saying, if we stick with Warden Hill Junior School, could we look at disabled parking or some sort of parking for disabled voters? I think that's the question there. I was just going to make a comment, and I think looking through some of the feedback and what's said, there's issues of lighting, and we're looking at lighting both inside the polling station and also lighting going into it, because I know some of the polling stations, when it gets dark, it's quite dark and you're walking down paths that are not well lit. So I wonder if that could be something we look into going as you're going around, and we're setting up with some of these. And then the other thing is about parking. I know parking is a big issue in the town, and some polling stations, they do get quite congested with people parking outside or parking on the road. And I just wonder, in setting up the polling stations for the next election, which is probably going to be the PCC, whether we could look at maybe even putting cones outside just to keep the traffic and the polling station clear. So that's something that I think worth considering. And these are general themes coming out, but I think those things there, and I'm sure you will do a disability access and assessment of each polling station as well. So that's fine. Any more questions from?
I want to add I agree with the Councillor Abbas. So I want to add one more thing, it's security.
Any particular aspect of security, Councillor?
The people are coming, they are finding places for parking and everything. It's some sort of other parties are there. So it should need to be a parking on that place for the calm and presentable polling,
Yep, certainly. We'll look into that. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, I think we're basically Debbie and Sam, you've got three questions there, recommendations. The one is to note the feedback and what you're setting out, which I think we all do. Does the committee agree with the recommendation set out in Annex A? Yeah, are we all agreeing with that? Yep. And then are we authorising our electoral registration officer and returning to make the necessary changes to the relevant polling stations, if required, to ensure the smooth running of the next scheduled election on the 2nd of May 2024 and any other unscheduled elections that may take place? So are we authorising them to make the necessary? Yeah, so yes, we do. And I think on that point, Sam and Debbie, the points around lighting and parking and coning up, it's something that if you can bear in mind when you're doing that, I think people will appreciate that. And the disability access, I think we've mentioned that already.
Certainly will. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. And I think, but have we got any Local Government Act 1972 agenda?
No, Chair.
Then that's it. I've formally closed this meeting. So